I'll stop sharing.
Hi everyone. Good morning. I am so excited to be here with Isabella to talk to us about Posit and Quarto, in fact. Isabella is let me just go up to the top and go to the home page of this. But Isabella Velasquez is a senior product marketing manager at Posit Software, where she develops strategic content to increase brand visibility and drive product adoption. She has a background in data analysis, reporting, and visualization, and holds a master's in analytics and BA in economics and East Asian language and civilizations from the University of Chicago. And she's also a wonderful teacher, and I'm really excited to have her here to work with us. So, Isabel, if you could go ahead and start off the workshop. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you to all the organizers for having me here and to all the attendees for joining. I am very excited today to talk about Quarto. All right, so let's get started. Let me make sure that my slides are working correctly. I'm sorry. Oops, sorry about this.
That's okay. Isabella, your volume is very low, so I don't know if you can maybe get closer to your microphone or speak up just a little bit more. That would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely. I don't know. Okay, I think I got.
Isabella, are you okay? Can you share slides, or do you need my help, or what can we do?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It was
No. We're just glad you're here. We're so glad you're here, and with your beautiful smiling face to
Thank
teach
you.
us about Quarto. So I just wanted to reach out in case, just to let you know that we're here if you need anything.
Thank
Okay.
you. Can you see my slides okay?
I can see your slides, and I think I can hear you okay. I don't,
Okay.
so.
All right. Well, thank you everyone again for being here and having me here. I'm really excited to talk about Quarto and how to tell your story with data. And so let's get started. Thank you, Gwen, for the introduction. My name is Isabella, and again, excited to be here. If you ever want to reach out, I would love to chat. And we do have the chat open as well. I'd love to learn more about you in terms of your name, your professional affiliation. I'd love to hear about what sorts of things you produce with data, and if you have a preferred programming language as well. And so for this workshop today, we're going to be focusing on materials for folks who have some knowledge of R or Python. Hopefully you have R or Python installed, but if not, we do have options for you to work through the materials if you would like. That you create things from data and code that you like to share with others, be it websites or presentations or PDFs. And you may be new to Markdown and Quarto. If you have not heard of either of these before, that's totally great. We'll get started from the very, very foundations. And in terms of what you'll walk away with, you'll get an introductory knowledge of Quarto, how to get started, how to start creating your own data outputs, and then some examples of documents with code that you can take with you as well. And for the workshop structure, so anything with this kind of gray background are going to be lecture segments where I'll be mostly talking. Feel free to, sit back, watch, take it easy. If there are links that you're more than welcome to check them out or look at the code. When you see something with a blue background, we'll shift over to me showing you some live coding, mainly to walk through the exercises so you can see how things look in real time. And if you would like, you can follow along. But again, feel free to sit back, And then with this reddish pink slides, then we'll shift to your turn so that you can dive into the materials and try things out on your own. And listed at the bottom of all of these slides is the link to the workshop materials. And so this has everything, the slides, instructions, and some more additional resources as well. And then included in the website, there is also an exercise repo with the files that you can work through as well. Okay, now that we've covered what we'll be talking about today, let's get into an introduction to Quarto. So Quarto is an open source, scientific, and technical publishing system built on Pandoc. So let's break this down. So open source, I work at Posit, formerly RStudio, and Posit believes that it's better for everyone if tools used for research and science are free and open. Free software means more reproducibility, widespread sharing of knowledge and techniques, and elimination of cost barriers. Scientific and technical means that the Quarto has specific things for journal articles or scientific paper, like support for code execution, citations, footnotes, equations, and so on. Publishing system means that Quarto is a tool for writing dynamic documents that combine code, output, and text, and it can embed output from Python and R and Julia and Observable. And it could be rendered to create high-quality articles, reports, presentations, websites, blogs, books, dashboards, so many things in HTML, PDF, MS Word, EPUB, and other formats. And finally, Pandoc is the tool that's working behind the scenes to change Quarto documents to their final format. So Quarto documents are authored with a language called Markdown, which is a plain text format, but there's a special flavor of Markdown called Pandoc, which is very rich, and it lets you control your document in very specific ways. And essentially with Quarto, you weave together narrative and code to create elegantly formatted output, such as documents and web pages and more. As noted, you can do this with Python, R, Julia, and Observable. You can edit documents in your favorite editor. You can publish all sorts of different formats of content as well. And when you're ready to share it with the world, you can publish to Posit Connect, Confluence, and other publishing systems. And Quarto sits inside the big and broad world of literate programming, which is the term for mixing narrative and text form and code for formatted outputs like documents and web pages. And there are lots of literate programming systems out there. So things like R Markdown, Org Mode, Jupyter Book, and Quarto. So if there are already other literate programming tools, you might wonder why create a new one. And so, first of all, Quarto was built from the start to support multiple computational systems and ecosystems. So you can create presentations, books, websites, and other kind of formats right after you install Quarto. So you don't have to install, say, another tool to be able to create all these different things. Consistent expression for core features means that regardless of which format you're outputting to, the syntax is written the same way. And for things that aren't part of base Quarto, there are extensions that add further functionality. And there are many provided by the community, and it's really rich and growing as well. Single source publishing means that often you have to create all sorts of output, like things that you print, things for the web, things on mobile, and you can do all of that from a single source in Quarto. And finally, the Quarto team thinks very deeply about accessibility and how Quarto can default to meet accessibility guidelines. And so back to the title of this workshop, you might be wondering why use Quarto for telling stories with data? There are lots of qualities of a good story, but I think some of them are that a good story is clear, credible, it provides context, and of course, it's engaging. And with Quarto, you can make things clear by using the various formats to tell your story. You can add credibility by making it reproducible. So regardless of who is running your document, they get the same results. The context can be added through things like footnotes and cross-references. And finally, the ability to add code and narrative together can really tell an engaging story that resonates with your audience. Really briefly, there are all sorts of formats, as I mentioned. Today, we'll be mostly focusing on the basic formats of HTML and PDF, but there are other options as well. For example, this presentation was created with Quarto and its Reveal.js format. And finally, the Quarto capabilities are very vast and growing, things like advanced layouts, being able to add callouts, interactivity, and things like that. And so really enhancing the sorts of things that you can create with code. Let's see some examples of how other people have used Quarto to tell their stories. So this is from Andrew Heiss. So in conjunction with the Idaho Secretary of State's office, Andrew created a website, a Quarto website for Idaho's primary election results. Hopefully this works. So this is the website, completely built in Quarto. You can click different, congressional results and take a look and kind of just scan through, how did things look in different districts and so on. And because, again, Quarto allows you to output data, all of this is created computationally as well. Another example is the Department of Health and Social Care in England. They created a health trend tool to open up public health data to a broader audience. And this particular example was shortlisted in the Analysis in Government Award. So again, built in Quarto, a website that kind of scans through these different metrics, and clicking in, you can go ahead and learn more. Some of that functionality that I mentioned is the ability to add these tab sets so that you can engage your audience with different types of information. And, if they prefer a chart, if they prefer a table, if they'd rather download the data themselves. Another example, I click, yes. So Posit recently held a scrollytelling contest. So you may have seen articles in newspapers like the New York Times that display visualizations as you scroll through the document. And so Quarto has an extension called scrollytelling that allows you to create these sorts of stories in Quarto. And so, excuse me, this one from the folks at the European Center for Social Welfare and Policy and Research talked about housing and neighborhood income inequality in Vienna, and it was one of the winners. Quarto also has extensive features for writing journal articles, from diagrams to technical notation, and you can also publish according to journal standards through the various extensions that are available. And with Quarto, you can create reports or presentations that update automatically when data changes or when you change inputs because you're creating a report with your code. So there's a software engineering concept called don't repeat yourself, or dry. And it's also very useful in data work because it encourages writing code that can be reused. And so in Quarto, you use parameters or variables to dynamically change parts of your document to generate the same report for, say, different regions, different departments, or different time periods. And with these reusable functions, you can keep your work cleaner, more consistent, easier to maintain. And the folks at the United States Geological Survey have really great blog posts on how they're implementing these ideas in Quarto.
Isabella, we had a couple of some questions in chat. I did my best to answer, but I think you could probably do better. So one of the questions someone pointed to a GitHub repo, and I looked at it. I didn't see a QMD extension. It looked like it was a Shiny app. But they wanted to know if that was built in Quarto. And then someone also asked the difference between Quarto and Power BI, and I wrote something about it in chat. But perhaps you could expound because I'm sure you know more than I do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just opened up the GitHub repo. I also don't see a QMD file. 1 second. I think so the this ECCE Signum GUI GitHub repo, it looks like this was created with Shiny. So Shiny is another tool from Posit, and what it allows you to do is create interactive apps and dashboards that are like completely in R, so you don't have, and there's also a version for Python called Shiny for Python. So you can create, a dashboard completely in R without having to know CSS or JavaScript or HTML. And one of the great things about Shiny is that it has something called reactivity. So some frameworks have to refresh everything every time you say, put in a new filter. And with Shiny, it only refreshes the things that it has to based on the user input. And so it can be very fast, it could be very scalable. We won't get too much into it today. Quarto has an output that's a format that's Quarto dashboards, and you can embed Shiny elements. So say you want to create a Quarto dashboard that has a filter and things like that. So there is some ways of working with Quarto and Shiny together. However, Quarto dashboards can get you very far away depending on your needs. But at some point, often, if you want a very advanced dashboard, you might want to consider creating something with fully Shiny. And in terms of what is the difference with Power BI, so Quarto is a publishing system. So you take this QMD file, which we'll see in a bit, and excuse me, and you can output all of these documents like you saw, like websites, journal articles, and things like that. Again, we won't talk too much about it. You can create dashboards with Quarto as well. But as been mentioned, Power BI is not open source. Quarto gives you the ability to bring in any R, Python, Julia observable package that you want to create the dashboard that you want. And just gives you that kind of flexibility as well. So, and I think Power BI is like a business intelligence tool. Like it's primarily built for creating, dashboards. Quarto can create all the different formats that I had on the list a little bit earlier. Did I get the questions?
It looks like they said that they meant to put this your slides were built in Quarto. I'm almost positive, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Well, apparently that was the link they were supposed to put in, and they put in this other link. And then there's another question about PII data, in using Quarto for PII data.
Yeah, so Quarto produces outputs, and so you can import any sort of data that you would like. If you're an R user, you might be reading a CSV, pulling from a database, same thing with Python users. And then within the Quarto document itself, you can do all sorts of data transformation and ultimately whatever output you create, that's what you would share. So you can absolutely use Quarto with sensitive PII data, but I would just say that, and Quarto can be installed completely locally. So wherever it's pulling from your PII data, it's not leaving your computer. But when you publish Quarto, you want to be aware of whatever you're publishing is following all of the standards and guidelines that you have for your data. And in addition, where you are publishing. So we'll touch briefly on the various options, but if you are publishing Quarto for, say, like on a cloud server, like like POSIT Connect Cloud, which is the example that we'll use today. A cloud server means that it's somebody else's server, and therefore you might not want to publish something that contains PII there, and so you'll want to consider other options. But in terms of actually working with PII data, Quarto is not going to send your data anywhere or anything like that. Like you asked, is Quarto open source? Yes, absolutely. Great. Any other questions?
I don't see any right now, but thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay. And the last example I wanted to give was Melissa Van Bussel, who gave a talk on how the Stats Canada team converted their not just their documentation, but training resources, presentations, and more to Quarto to streamline their efforts. And so I hope those examples just kind of showcase how Quarto can help you communicate your results, your training materials, your data findings, all sorts of things like that. And in terms of how to get started with Quarto, you can download the Quarto command line interface, or CLI, on quarto.org. When you download the Quarto CLI, though, that's technically all you need to run Quarto. So if you're on a Mac, for example, you can just use your terminal, or in Windows, your command line interface for everything that we're about to explore. However, that being said, if you want to run Quarto with code, you're also going to have to use a programming language. And often when using programming languages like R or Python, you might instead want to work in an editor rather than your terminal. And so part of the multilingualism of Quarto is that you're not tied to one tool. So Quarto is meant to collaborate either within data science teams or across data science teams. So if someone is familiar with VS Code, but somebody else likes to work in RStudio, they can still work on the same Quarto documents without having to switch from one tool to the other. And today I am going to be using a new IDE from POSIT called Positron. And like Quarto, Positron was built to be inherently multilingual. So whether you use R or Python, you can get started in Positron without having to, install certain things that aren't necessary in your particular programming language. However, we have other options as well if you don't have Positron readily available. So in terms of the options for today, POSIT Cloud has R, RStudio, Quarto, and all of the R packages installed. All you need is a free account. You log in and it opens up RStudio in the browser. If you prefer Python, there's a GitHub code space. It does take several minutes to load. So if you want to work with Quarto and Python, I suggest opening it up as soon as possible if you'd like to go this route. And the packages are not pre-installed in GitHub code spaces, but the instructions are on the website. Finally, you can also install Positron, RStudio, or VS Code locally, but then you'll also have to have R and Python installed. You'll need to install the packages and download the repo materials. And so in the interest of time, if you do not have these already set up, I recommend going with POSIT Cloud or GitHub code spaces for now and coming back to the materials after the workshop. Yes. All right, so with that, let's, what you can do is you can go to the workshop website, click on 00 instruction in the sidebar, and here is the link, also on the slide, always down here in the slides, and then you follow the setup instructions. So what that looks like, here, click 00. Down here are all the setup instructions. And again, my recommended way, if you don't have everything installed already, is to do either POSIT Cloud or GitHub code spaces. And so I just have 5 minutes to set this up, and I am happy to answer questions in the meantime as well. Yes, Eureka, I saw you ask where are the slides. I do recommend opening up the website because everything will be there as well. Nora, I see you ask, can Quarto doc incorporate SAS code much like it does with R code? So because SAS is a proprietary language, I honestly do not know very much about how R can interface with SAS. And so, and because, you need a license to use SAS and things like that, there may be ways of setting up a Quarto doc, but it's definitely like, it depends on like what's available for R. Rather than what's available for Quarto, if that makes sense. If R can incorporate its SAS code, then you could do it with Quarto. Yes, so GitHub Spaces, just to show what that looks like, that's option 2 here. So you do need a GitHub account if you don't already have one. You can go to the GitHub repo. And then here where it says code, click code spaces, and then this plus sign. When you do that, it's going to open up VS Code in the cloud. And then it's going to load Quarto and Python. And then once you are done with that, let me make sure I'm not missing anything. It might ask you to install something called Markdownlit. You can just go ahead and say yes. And then once everything is loaded, go down to this section where it says install the necessary packages. And for Python, follow these instructions. Nora, are you using Posit Cloud or GitHub Codespaces or something else? Oscar, that's really exciting that you're at the Positron workshop. I'll be at USAR too, so I hope to see you there. So hopefully, at the Posit Cloud, you open up a project. Sorry, it takes a little bit. Do you see these down here? And just to confirm, you click this project link. Just let me know. Yeah, it takes a minute. If you're using CodeSpace, let me know if you click this link here where it says go to the GitHub repo. You click code and then code spaces. And then there's this plus sign. It takes a few minutes, so I don't think I'd be able to show, but this is what you would see as you're setting it up. Oh, it happened really fast. Oh, the actual loading will take a little bit. Yeah. Okay, awesome. I think just about at time. We'll have a bit more time, hopefully. You like Mario. There. Good to hear that. We'll have a bit more time, more space for exercises, and so let me know if you continue to run into issues. Okay, so we're gonna shift right back into the next exercise. And so let's talk through the Quarto workflow. So as mentioned, the QMD file format is the format for Quarto documents. So if you hear me say QMD file, what I mean is a Quarto document. You open up a Quarto document, you start writing in it, and when you want to see what it actually looks like, you can hit render or preview, and then it will show you the output that you have created. As you make changes to your Quarto document, you can go ahead and preview or render the document again. If you're using RStudio, it's going to look like the image on the left, and RStudio has this blue arrow render button that you can click. Excuse me. And if you're if you're using Positron or VS Code, you can click the preview button as you see here. And so just to show what that looks like, say I'm using Posit Cloud. And I think when you first open it up, this might not be open. You go to the Files pane on the lower right. You hit 01 exercise R, and then hit render, which is up here. Give it a second to process. And if you're using Posit Cloud, you might get this pop-up blocked. You can just say try again, and then it will open up. So this QMD file has a bunch of code and packages and text already written there. And when you render it, this is what the output looks like. So again, go ahead, give it a try. If you're using GitHub Codespaces, I hope it has loaded by now. I know it takes a little bit. And then you can render your first document. And again, all of these instructions are, if you go to the website, hit exercise 1, and they're right here as well. All right.
There was just a question about what kind of files Quarto produces. I think
Yeah, so I'll go back here.
it can produce, I don't know, maybe you can go through it all.
Yeah. So the QMD files, like when mentioned, those are the inputs. And then in terms of the outputs, it can do things. Today we'll explore HTML. So the one I just showed was HTML. You can do PDF, Word documents. Types is another version for PDFs. And here are just other examples as well. So the slides that you're seeing, those are called, that format is called Reveal.js. And yeah, create all sorts of things. Nora, yes, you can. The question is, can I run Quarto from RStudio directly rather than Posit Cloud? Absolutely. The reason that I am showing Posit Cloud is just so in case folks don't have RStudio and R already installed, and it comes with the advantage of having the packages and the files already in there, so you don't have to install all the packages and things like that. Yes, exactly, George. You can run it from RStudio, and the instructions are also on that instructions page of the website if you would rather do it locally. And another thing to note, so I believe starting in version 2022.07, RStudio comes pre-installed with Quarto. So you don't have to do that first step of going to the Quarto website and downloading it and installing it. It already comes in RStudio. Oh no, play it again. But there's still a little bit more time. And if you have rendered your document and you want to keep playing around with it, what you can do is say, change something in the title or in the text or something like that, and hit render again and see how the document changes. Yeah. Nora, yes, can you render highlighted portions of the doc? Could you please let me know what that means? Do you mean like only render certain parts of the document? And Eleanor, for rendering in code spaces, there should be a preview button. Apologies, I don't have it open. Let me see if I can open the one I had before. No, sorry, but I think the preview would be up here in the top right. Yeah, and in VS Code and Positron, it shows as preview, and RStudio, it shows as render. And render selected portions of the document. So say like I wanted my document to end here. I would say it's going to render everything from top to bottom, but there are things you can do if you only want to do selected portions. I mean, one way that is to just remove everything below or above what it is that you want to show. And there are like, there's a lot of ways of tailoring. Quarto, you can, and later we're going to talk about divs, and divs allow you to say like, do not show, stay hidden, things like that. If you go to the Quarto website and look for hidden, you'll see how you can kind of conditionally render different portions of the document. So Peter, yes. And so if you are doing code spaces or your own VS Code or Positron, you will need to install the packages. And so you please follow these instructions. First, you set up a virtual environment by going to the command palette and typing in Python create environment. And then you select an environment. It's going to give you an interpreter path, whatever Python you have available. And then, yes, you would select requirements.txt. And when you hit OK, it's going to install all the packages that you have. Yeah, so the message that you got is for a VM, but I'm not sure how to say it, that you need to restore that. Yes, and this is how you do it. Yeah, great. Nora, yes, absolutely. And definitely you can try playing around with it. And in R, if you want to say comment this out, you can put these pound signs and you'll see that they turn this green. It means that they won't be rendered. And as you can imagine, R runs from top to bottom. So if I comment out the data and try to run it, it's going to be like, oh yeah, I can't find your data. So, but you can absolutely comment things out. You can rename the title to whatever you'd like. Really, it's just to explore how it works. Oh, I think the time is up. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I know that setup and installation can take a little bit, but I appreciate you trying it out. So, all right. now let's talk about how to actually write a Quarto document. The examples that I gave are already written, and this is how you can create your own. So as mentioned, a Quarto document has a QMD extension for when you are actually writing it. Yeah, I know setup it takes a bit. And again, all these materials will be available to you. I did forget to mention in Posit Cloud, if you're doing that, there's a button on the top that says temporary, and that you can save a permanent copy to your own Posit Cloud account. If you want to keep them, I recommend doing that because I will be closing the Posit Cloud project in a few days, but it'll still be available on the GitHub repo and everything like that. All right, so a Quarto document has a QMD file extension. There are 3 components to this document. And the first one, is what's called YAML, which is either yet another markup language or YAML and a markup language, depending on who you ask. And this contains the metadata of your document. The next part is the text, which is written in Markdown, as mentioned previously. And finally, the code, which is can be R, Python, Observable, or Julia. Put it all together, and you'll have the output like you saw when you rendered your document. So these Quarto documents usually start with an optional YAML header, which is demarcated by 3 dashes on either end. And the syntax of YAML uses key value pairs in the format key:value, and it controls the output of your document and contains metadata for your document. So common YAML fields are things like author, subtitle, date, and then customization options as well, like theme and font color and fig width and stuff like that. The next part of a Quarto document that goes underneath the YAML header is the Markdown text. So Markdown is a lightweight language for creating formatted text using a plain text editor, and Quarto uses this Markdown as its syntax. If you've never seen Markdown before, here's an example. So if you see here, nation.csv has these tick marks. National Inventory of Dams has this bracket and then 2 asterisks and then a link as well. And when you render this text, what you get is this output. So nation.csv is in this code text, code font. National Inventory of Dams is a link and bolded as well. And here's some other examples of Markdown syntax. So the 2 asterisks are bold, 1 asterisk is italics. You can do strike through, verbatim code, and whatnot. And then finally, the last part of a Quarto document intermixed with your text is the code. So the code, as you can see here on lines 8 through 15, it is begins and ends with 3 backticks, and then the language that you want to use in curly brackets. And you can put optional chunk options within a code chunk. Sorry, I'll get to that in a second, but this is what a code chunk looks like. In addition to using code chunks, you can also execute code within your Markdown text. So for example, here we had a code chunk for Python, and it defines dams as 92,428. And within my Markdown text, I can reference that by using this tick mark Python dams. And when I render this, it's going to output this sentence. The number of dams is blank. And the reason that this would be really helpful, if you imagine if you have a report where you are writing a lot of text with the output from your data, that say your data is updated, instead of having to go back and find every single time that you reference a number and maybe miss a couple or mistype something or anything like that, the inline text can be directly from the code that you've written.
Isabella, there's a question in the Q&A. that asks if you can what other languages you can use besides Python and R. It seems that someone noticed the Bash and SQL. Is can
Yes.
you outline that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Quarto, and so Quarto is built on an engine called knitr. And if anybody is familiar with R Markdown, that's using the same engine of knitr. And there are various different execution code execution options. And because Quarto also uses knitr, it also has the same execution options. So things like SQL and C++, open source languages, like unfortunately not things like SAS as far as I'm aware. And I will write down there is a list of the execution options that I'll add to the website in case you want to see what else is available. But I would say like the difference is that like Quarto is natively built for R, Python, Julia, and Observable, and it is built in such a way that other languages could be added to in the future. But it does still have the ability to do other languages as well. Okay, so back to the code options or code chunks. So as mentioned, code chunks have those 3 ticks, the execution language in the curly braces, and then you can also add an optional code chunk. So here on line 9, we have echo :false, and it's identified by this pound sign and a long line, which we call the hash pipe. And so in this case, echo false means that I want you to run this code, but I don't want you to show the code in the final output. And as you can imagine, that's probably very helpful if you have if you're giving a report to somebody who's not interested in seeing your code. They just want to see your figures or your tables or things like that. Here's just another examples of code chunk options. So another one, this particular code chunk outputs a ggplot figure using the Python version of ggplot called plot9. And so if you want to add, say, alternative text to this plot, you can add a code chunk option called fig alt, and then write your alternative text there. And so when you render this document and say somebody is reading it with a screen reader, they'll be able to see the alternative text. Excuse me. And so there are various other options for the code chunk, like whether or not to evaluate a code chunk. If, say, you are loading a package and it gives a warning and you don't want to see the warning in your final output, you could say warning is false. And there are other options available in the Quarto documentation. All right, so this is going to be your turn again. So you can open up your exercise. Let me see whether it's gone to sleep. Okay, great. So once again, open up your exercise. You can preview the file, start adding some code chunk options like this include :false. In the YAML, go ahead and add an author field with your name. There's various things you could do. In the YAML, there's a cold fold option, change it to true. And if you want to try writing inline code, as I mentioned, in the first paragraph, there's a hard-coded value, and then you can make it instead something that's reading from the code, or I'm sorry, from the data itself, and the 2 options for R and Python are available. And this is available if you go to 01 documents in the website. It's all listed down here, as well as the code that you can try out. All right. 5 minutes. Okay, see a couple of questions. Could we possibly convert QMD files to other files like Pi files, or is it strictly QMD? Yes, there are ways of, like, what it would do is it would convert it to a Pi file, which would be a Python file. So of course, if you were to render that, it wouldn't look like Quarto anymore, but it would pull, say, all of the Python script from your QMD file, if you so choose. And there's also the option of doing it vice versa. So say you have a Python file, there are also functions for converting it into a Quarto, a QMD file. Can I add, Oscar asks, can I add HTML parameters for the rendered code chunk div? Sorry, Oscar, do you mind giving me an example of an HTML parameter? Nora asks, what is the difference between run? Oh, here. So in RStudio, so run is referring to the R code. So say I highlight this and I hit run. It does give me a few options. I could say run selected lines. And this is just going to be running the R script here. And so here it loaded the packages and it read in the data, which I can now see in my environment pane. Render is specific to Quarto. So what this is saying is take this QMD file and whatever format I put up here, give me the output. And so that's, let me know if you have additional questions. Oh, okay. Oscar, we're about to get into divs. So yes, we'll talk about it in a little bit.
Isabella, there's another question in the Q&A. Do you want me to read it out to you, or do you want to?
Yeah, that sounds great.
It says, it looks like Bash, which is more or less like Linux operating system. Does Quarto talk to DOS command or PowerShell Windows operating system? That would be awesome, because if this is possible, that means you can invoke SAS, MATLAB, SPSS, Stata code. And he wondered if I guess I'm not sure what your gender is, but they wonder if there's any plans in the future to do that if it's not possible now.
I have to admit, I do not know. This ties into that earlier question of what are the list of execution options. So I'll have to do more research.
I found a list of them in the book down file.
Oh,
Or
great.
in the our markdown book, but I'm not sure that I put in the question and answer. So I don't know if that's helpful for you right now or
Oh,
not.
thank you. Yes, absolutely. So these are the different execution options. So things like you can render to CSS, of course, R, and things like that. SQL, I think somebody mentioned as well. So for Bash, oh, well, Bash is here. So it looks like it might be an option. Yeah, with these, you could get very creative, and the nice thing is that you can do that all in the same document. Anybody have any issues with the exercises? What is cell? Oh, we will, okay. So a particular cell would be what is within this code chunk. So if I say click within this code chunk, let's say run current chunk. Oh, sorry, let me know if this is what you mean. It would run everything that's contained within here. Timothy, you mentioned that various open AI tools can help write Quarto code. Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is one of the really great parts of open source tools. AI can be very good at writing in it, especially if you're looking for help with like boilerplate code or just, something very basic to get started with. And so if you're like, hey, can you help me write a Quarto document? These newer like LLM models have some reference to it and can help you get started for sure. All right. Let's return. Okay. Yes. So we talked about the anatomy of a Quarto document, which again is the YAML header, the markdown text, and the code. So let's talk a bit more about how to continue customizing your documents to look the way that you would like. We've talked a bit about markdown syntax. Here's a few more options like creating links, adding images. Within Markdown itself, you can create simple tables like this one and continue adding different Markdown syntax to customize it. So here I have changed the widths of the table columns. There's native support for diagrams where the syntax looks like this. And if you notice in the code chunk option, this is something that's not R or Python. It's called Mermaid. And so this project is relatively new, but can easily help you create these kind of diagrams within your documents. You can also write things in math mode in LaTeX. So it renders looking like this as you would see in a paper or so. Okay, Oscar mentioned divs a bit earlier. So for further customization, you can add classes and attributes and other identifiers to content using either divs or spans. Some divs and spans are built into Quarto. And if you know a bit of CSS, and you can write your own as well. So you can really make the text look exactly the way that you want. So this is an example of a div that comes built in with Quarto. So it's demarcated by 3 colons, and then in curly braces, the name of the div. And these are provided in the Quarto documentation. Then there's text in between, and then it ended with 3 more colons. And then when you render this, it's going to end up looking like this. So a callout note with callout block, as you can imagine, calls out specific parts of text. So if you're reading, it's going to have this green box with text within it. Another example of a div that's built into Quarto is creating columns. So in this case, within the curly braces, we have layout and call to. So it's saying make 2 columns. And then the things within the div itself is going to be put in each respective column. So the first one is going to be an image. The text with Markdown is going to be in the second column. And it ends up looking like this. One more option for, well, there are lots of different div options built into Quarto, but another one is tab sets, which you have seen in the exercises. And so if you write it with panel tab set, you can add groups if you want, and that allows it so that every tab set changes. If somebody, say, clicks Python, all the tabs switch to Python. And so that allows people to click into various options, or if you just want to highlight like, something more prominently, but also give another option, you could do that as well. And with spans within Markdown text itself, you can add this, different kind of styling. So the red within the square braces is going to be converted into the color red because of the style from the span. And probably the one that I use most often is if you have a figure and you want to, not one that's outputted from code, that one you would use the code chunk option that we saw earlier, but say an image just within your report itself, and you want to add alternative text, you can use the span of fig alt to add it within your text. And the last thing I want to mention is that for this section is that you can change formats. So we saw earlier there was a table of all the various things that you can output from your QMD file once you hit render, the different things that you can make. So the default, the one that you have in the exercise right now, is HTML. If you do reveal.js, you will get a presentation. So similar to this one that you're looking at right now. You could do PDF. And again, the exact same document is going to output a PDF that you can share like via email and stuff like that. So for the final exercise for this section, please go ahead and try it out. There's some text at the top and you can add an important call out like so. Try changing the format to Reveal.js and preview the document and see how it changes. And you could go through the slides, change the format to PDF, try it again. Feel free to, just try different things. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. Oscar, let me know if I answered your question.
So there's a question in chat from Oscar that I'm not sure you saw it.
Okay, if it's possible to include, the question is it possible to include things like style, color, red in a chunk option? Just to clarify, in this text, in this example, are you trying to make it in a red box? Are you trying to change text? Just so I understand. So within a code chunk, you would be writing code. And so you would not be changing the color of the code within the text. But say you have just regular text that you're writing in Markdown in your document, like this, within your QMD file, you can change that text by using the span. And feel free to try it. I could actually, we have enough time. I can show you what that looks like. So here, this is the YAML heading. This is the code chunk option. And so this is all the markdown text. And you can kind of tell because it's, well, first of all, it's not within a code chunk, and then the color is slightly different. It's a white background instead of gray. So if I render, I had to allow pop-ups. It looks like this. Let's say I want detailed information to be a different color. Let me just copy this so I don't have to type it. I surround what I want to be a different color by square brackets and then add the span next to it. Render again. And now detailed information is going to be red. Let me know if you want me to try something. I see. Instead of changing the So if we're not going to get too much into this today, but you can add custom CSS or SCSS, which is called SAS files in order to further customize your document. So I don't think what you reference, which is a rendered code div to have a different shadow or border or different text color is built into Quarto. You would have to add that to your CSS. And then that way you can add it through like a custom div or by changing the theme of your document, which we'll talk about in a bit. Yeah, you would definitely have to test it out to make sure that, it looks the way that you expect. Oh, okay. George asks, what is it supposed to look like? Okay, so this is what it looks like right now. And what it's supposed to look like. So say I want to put this in a call out box. I wrap it in this div. And there again. And it should be in something like this. Something to note is make sure that you have a period next to call out, essentially that it looks like this. That's something that I forget all the time, the period. Okay. Please keep playing around. And I think we are on to the next project. Wow, time really flies. Gwen, how much time do I have left?
We're supposed to end at 11:45, so you have
Oh,
8
okay.
minutes.
Oh no. Okay. Well, I'm just going to go through everything very quickly. I'm so sorry, but please do reach out. I hope that this has been helpful. So we talked about how Quarto from a QMD file can output HTML and things like that. But what if you want to build, say, a book or a website, things where different documents are related to each other in some way? That's when you would do a Quarto project. And so they allow you to render all the files in a directory or a file folder with this Quarto render command. You can share YAML configuration across multiple documents. So if you have a custom theme and say you're working on a blog, you might want every post to have a theme. And so then you would put that in your Quarto project so that it knows to apply it across different documents. You can also typically Quarto outputs in the same folder that you are creating your QMD file in, but this projects give you more functionality in terms of where you want to output documents. And we're also the ability to freeze documents. And so as you can imagine, as you saw, rendering a QMD file can take quite a bit of time, and you can make it so that they only execute when you have changed something in the QMD file itself. And so there are some things that can only be within a Quarto project, like a website, a blog, or a book. And in terms of what defines a Quarto project, it's as long as a directory has an underscore quarto.yaml file, it will be a Quarto project. So this one is a Quarto project because it has an underscore Quarto YAML file. This one is not because it does not have one. And it's going to, because it's a YAML file, as we mentioned earlier, it's going to have those key value pairs. So it usually starts with project and the title, but you can further customize it. So the YAML, Quarto YAML file for the website that you are working on today looks like this. In line 2 and 5 through 8, it specifies that I want to create a website specifically with a title and a description that spans all of the different pages of the website. And then in the contents itself, the way that you can click within the same website into different QMD files is because I have referenced all of them within the website itself. And you can do execute freeze, which, as mentioned, you can add to your Quarto YAML file so that it never re-renders during a project render, or re-renders only when the source changes. Okay, unfortunately, I don't think we have time for the exercise, but again, the website will be readily available for you if you want to try it out. Essentially, what we were going to do is take the document that you have, convert it into a website so that you can add different pages.
So, Isabella, we can go to 11:50 if we need to, or just wanted you to know you can have a
Oh,
little
thank
bit
you.
more time.
Yeah, sorry.
I know there's so
It's
much to go over, but
it's pretty exciting, but yes, there is quite a bit. But these sections are a lot shorter. We've gotten through the bulk of hopefully how to get started writing a Quarto. So Quarto theming, you have a Quarto file and you saw how it looks like by default, but you might want to change and customize what it looks like. So for example, adding colors or changing the fonts and things like that. So you can add themes. There are 25 themes from the Bootswatch project that come pre-installed with Quarto. So you would just switch these out and Quarto would recognize them and change them accordingly. And the way that you do it is in that YAML header at the top, you would add theme and then the name of the theme that you want. So in this case, I'm saying please use the Flatlay theme. But usually we want to use our organization's theme. So for example, here's the flyer from today's conference. And I was like, oh, what if I'm, trying to make my materials match the theme? So using this blue and using this gray and using these different fonts as well. And so the easiest way of doing that is this tool called brand YAML. And so you create another YAML file in addition to your Quarto YAML file that specifies your organization's brand guidelines that will be applied to all of your outputs from Quarto and also the plots as well. So the documentation site is really great and I highly recommend taking a look. But in terms of what you would specify, meta are things like your company's name, logo, which you can actually see here on the bottom, color, and typography is the fonts, and then additional things if you so choose. And in terms of what this YAML file looks like, so you would save this in your project directory and you would add the meta. So again, YAML is key value pairs. So key : value. So here I'm saying the key is name, the value is the example company, and I could add things like links. I could specify a logo, specify the colors that I want. So I'm saying, I want to use this blue or throughout my document and things like that. Typography is the different fonts, so I can pull them from, say, Google. You can also import custom fonts if you want to use them in your Quarto outputs as well. And then once you have that _brand.yaml file saved in your folder, as long as you have Quarto greater than version 1.6, it will automatically detect that brand YAML file and then apply that brand to all the documents of the supported formats in the project. And so in the exercise, we have an example and that you can try for applying to that Quarto example document. And so just really briefly, you can also specify light and dark brand YAML files so that, somebody can toggle between a light theme and a dark theme. And you can also use that same theme throughout your plots. And so you would put it in your YAML header, and then within your code chunk options, you would say, give, the viewer these two options, light and dark. And they could toggle between, sorry, not toggle between, depending on how you are rendering the document, it will either show up as light or show up as dark. And for the exercise, it was going to be exactly that. There is a YAML file that has all the things contained within brand YAML. All you have to do is change it to _brand.yaml, and you'll be able to re-render your document I wonder if I could do it really quick. So what did I call it? Oh boy, I hope I didn't accidentally delete it. I will make sure to put a brand file for you if I have. Oh no, here it is. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so it's an 04 exercise YAML. So this is the format of a brand YAML file. If I rename this to brand.yaml, Quarto will automatically identify it as a brand YAML file. And if I render, whenever it's done. Oh no. I don't know why it's taking so long. Okay. I know that we're over time. The last part that I just want to mention is eventually you'll want to publish your Quarto output, be it a website or a book or an HTML file. And there are lots of options for doing this. And here's some of the ones that are available. There's a link to the documentation on the Quarto website if you want to see how to actually do it. The example that we had is trying out Posit Connect Cloud, which is where these slides are hosted. And you can sign up for a free account. You link it to your GitHub account, and then you can publish the dashboard. Oh, here we go. So this is the same QMD file that we were working on earlier, but I've changed it so that now it's reading that brand YAML file. And so now it has, the font that I've specified, this one too, the different colors for the headings, and so on. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I know that was a lot to cover, and so I really appreciate you hanging with me. I hope that you've learned a lot, and I'm really happy to answer any questions. And if we run out of time here, feel free to reach out as well.
Thank you so much, Isabella. So I think all of us are really appreciative of your work. So we can email you if we have questions, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we all go to PositConf in Atlanta in September if we want to learn more? Or
Yeah, absolutely. And especially around brand YAML, Sarah Altman, my colleague, and I are giving a workshop on branded Quartos. We'll talk about, all sorts of themes in Quarto and how to, if you really want your stuff to look exactly like how your organization likes it. So please do join us. I'd love to see you there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isabella. Thank you, everyone, and we'll end now so we can go to GASP 2025 Day Thursday.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.